Delighted to welcome you all to our September seminar on the subject of repairs and maintenance in multi-unit developments. Our guest speaker is Rachel Clark, Operations Director with MJ Clark & Sons, a well-established building contractor firm. I'd like to take the opportunity to thank Rachel for her time this morning. Rachel's presentation will cover common area repair and maintenance issues which arise in multi-unit developments, typically roofs, balconies, common area pipework and external repairs. She will cover best practice regarding maintenance in multi-unit developments. She will also cover leaks in multi-unit developments, the sort of timelines involved in sourcing and addressing them, and she will go through a number of case studies. This seminar is also being streamed live, so I'd like to welcome those who have joined us online, and I'll now hand you over to Rachel.
Thank you, Paul. Well, just first of all, to give an introduction to MJ Clark & Sons, and then just what we're going to cover today is common repair and maintenance issues in multi-unit developments, sample problems and solutions, the importance of a planned preventative maintenance programme, recommendations in addressing maintenance issues, and then budgeting for repairs and maintenance annually, as well as the importance of using reputable contractors. So, the reputable contractor is MJ Clark's. Very pleased to be here. Thanks a million for inviting me. We were established in 1961. The company was actually established by my father, who still takes a huge interest in the business. It's his name on all of our vans, and he kind of takes obviously a personal interest in getting in quality and delivering service. We're a privately owned business. Turnover in 2012 is about 5.5 million. We have two business areas, maintenance and contracting. 27 full-time employees. We employ carpenters, roofers, bricklayers, blocklayers, a bank of expert subcontractors. Although we don't actually employ handymen, although there's a lot of really good handymen around, but we're actually really builders at the end of the day. We're members of the CIF and the MBCA. We are accredited by Contractor Plus in the UK, which is a health and safety audit that's undertaken on behalf of our multinational clients. We're currently undergoing safety certification accreditation, and we are qualified and insured to act as project supervisor construction stage, which is going to become more and more relevant with the new building regulations, of which a code of practice is just being written at the moment, and that will affect MUDs. We're insured, we are tax compliant, all of our staff have appropriate safety training, relevant tickets and safe pass, so they can use the hoists, they can go up on roofs, etc. We thoroughly vet all of our subcontractors from an insurance point of view and also in terms of the quality of their workmanship. And we offer a 24/7 call-out service, which we don't actually charge for unless it's used. It's something that we introduced about 25 years ago when we were doing an awful lot of work with the Bank of Ireland. And just so that, like on Christmas Eve, when somebody's walking down O'Connell Street and decided to stick a stone through a glass in the front of the bank or whatever, MJ Clark's were called out, we would turn up, make the bank safe, and everybody's happy. So, now, common repair and maintenance issues in multi-unit developments. I'm just going to speak about our experience of the things that we come across. It's all fairly general, it's fairly basic, but it's also very important because it's your guys' money that is being spent on these repairs. You need to know they're being addressed quickly, and it's also about preventing things like insurance claims, and so actually addressing a problem as it arises rather than waiting for it to get worse. And we just see there typical kind of things would be like, maybe a sunken manhole, curbing, bollards falling over, being knocked over, things that will actually create a trip hazard for the public walking in and out, or residents walking in and out, which you obviously want to avoid claims on. Then moving into the things like in the entrance lobbies, you'd have like call-outs for maybe a door closer or a door handle coming off. Could be vandalism, damage to doors, people just being rough with doors, glazing problems, glass being broken. Also, just as you walk into a unit, at the end of the day, like they're people's assets. They want to ensure like good rental income, so the property has to look well. And when you've kind of a property that's rented out, an awful lot of rented tenants rather than owners, people are bringing bikes through halls and all that kind of stuff. It just looks very scruffy. So it's just important that that kind of stuff is addressed as it happens as well. Then things like floor tiles, carpets, all that kind of stuff we just get called out to kind of address. Then into the building itself, lighting, alarms, blown bulbs, light fittings. Again, an awful lot of that can be done by a caretaker, but when it comes to fittings, you absolutely have to use a registered electrician. Fire alarms and lifts, again, things breaking down, we get called out to. Then you've got other things more in the structure of the building, like balconies and windows. And for example, on balconies, it could be balcony glass, just problems with glass and metal contacting and glass blown, like on the example shown up there. Also, you've got leaks from balconies. And then leaks, obviously there's so many different types of leaks. You can see there's a nuisance pipe leaking out onto from a development, from an apartment. And you've got leaks from stack pipes internally in the common areas and risers. You've got roof leaks, you've got balcony leaks, you've got cladding leaks, you've got window leaks, you've got leaks in cappings, which is just show an example there, just where the mastic seal has come loose on an actual, on the joint in the capping that just needs to be repaired because it allows water ingress underneath. Other things then, mould, which is sometimes reported as a leak, but in fact it's caused by a build-up of condensation. It could be caused by blocked up vents. Again, in highly rented or high volume of rented accommodation, you'll get people who they want to save on their electricity or their heating bills, so they're stuffing up the outlets, the vent outlets, so there's no ventilation in the apartments, and people drying clothes, people cooking. Again, it's just all steam building up. Or it could be a cold bridge, which would be in a lot of the older developments, just maybe a lack of ventilation, or lack of insulation, sorry. I just found that table on the internet, which I just thought was quite interesting, and just goes to show for the importance of good ventilation. If you have 4 people living in a property, they create 16 pints of moisture per day, which amounts to 112 pints of moisture per week, which obviously has to go somewhere. So ventilation is hugely important. So sample problems and solutions that we have come across. Now, all of the photographs don't directly relate to the leaks, but they're associated with the type of, or the problem that it actually is. So, for example, leaks from a balcony, just to kind of demonstrate the difficulty in addressing a leak in a balcony, because you've got, first of all, it can be, there's decking, it can be tiled, it can be paved, so all of that has to be lifted in order to actually get access to either the outlet underneath or to the membrane, just to actually check and see where the leak is actually getting into the property underneath. Just you can see the example there of, on the right hand side there, the flower box. Which is a beautiful flower box located in an apartment on a terrace, all beautiful lighting and everything in it, but there's a leak going down below into an apartment below, and the only way to actually get at the leak was to dismantle the whole flower box. And as you see in the bottom photograph there, the outlet was directly underneath it. The outlet had torn membrane all around it. So again, the whole thing, in order, you have to give access to the outlets for the future, so the flower box essentially had to be removed. Also just residents I don't think are really aware that that they need to keep their outlets flowing freely. Like, everybody's responsible in most developments, I think, to actually keep their own outlets flowing freely. So again, with paving covering it up or decking, that just makes it a little bit difficult. Leaks from cappings. As well as the fact that they actually cause damage inside, you'll see, like in kind of lobby areas and stuff, it's actually highly unsightly. It's just when you drive into a development, it does look pretty awful. And this is just an example of one that we came across where obviously the water is well, we didn't know what it was. First of all, we thought it might have been something to do with the hopper head or the outlet coming out of the wall there. But in fact, when we did some investigative works, we lifted the cappings and we found that there was no damp-proof course in place. So we fitted the damp-proof course, refitted the capping stones, sealed all the capping stones, all the joints in the capping stones to make it actually watertight. And then unfortunately it's a monocouche finish on it, so it's a specialist finish on it. It can't just be kind of patched in and plastered, but obviously the end result looked fabulous. And it was watertight. Okay, here's another example, just a leak showing in a 3rd floor living room. Again, it's just trying to demonstrate the issue with access. In that particular development, it's a 3-storey development. We actually needed a hoist in order to hoist the roof ladder up onto the roof to actually carry out the repairs. And again, just a typical example of something that you would find when we lifted back the slates over the particular area, and the flashings were lifted back as well. There was just an issue with the overlap on the sarking felt underneath it, which again could have been there from the outset, but so essentially, obviously, that was repaired and the roof tiles reinstated. And then water staining in a common area corridor. Again, it's due to water ingress, and it's something as well that is kind of water travels. Like, where you actually see the stain doesn't necessarily mean that the water is emanating from directly above. In this particular instance, it's actually there's a capping stone on an aluminium capping. And just basically the joints in the capping the mastic joints had just come away. So obviously we just raked it out and replaced it and fitted an Everseal tape over that, which is just to make it watertight again. Then another typical kind of thing, a reactive, unplanned maintenance, just a car in the snow, you can see it there. Obviously the car went out of control, just hit the wall, and the wall had to be taken down. The whole thing dismantled, it was structurally unsound, and obviously rebuilt again, and again we just do that with our bricklayers. But again, it's something that you just couldn't leave there, it has to be addressed kind of fairly quickly. This is probably an example of the difficulty in actually repairing internal leaks in multi-unit developments is access. This was a leak that was reported. Again, it's on a four-storey apartment block. The one on the bottom is probably going to take the worst of it in general because it's getting it from 3 above. But in this particular instance, there was we were obviously when you got the call out to say there's a leak showing in the ground floor, there's a process of elimination to try and get through. Okay, you start with the easy fixes first of all, the apartment directly above. Again, it wasn't coming from there, so eventually you get up to the top floor. We're trying to get access into every apartment, and one particular resident wouldn't give access and said they'd had their own plumber in, they'd had everything checked out, everything was fine, and so eventually, when the leak couldn't be found anywhere else, they eventually agreed to give access. And we got in, and essentially there was a washing machine feeding into a stack pipe, and the joint had separated. And so the water was coming down. It had basically gone down through all the different floors, and through although obviously there's a concrete slab, where the pipes come through, the water was getting around the pipework, went all the way down and damaged the fire stopping, the insulation and everything in all of the different apartments. So in that whole line of apartments, there was 4 bathrooms that essentially had to have toilet, sink, toilet and radiator disconnected and removed. The partition wall taken down, the insulation replaced, and the fire ceiling replaced all the way down through it. So it's just a very expensive, but probably a typical problem when access is actually an issue in the multi-unit developments. This is just another example of where the leak isn't the most obvious kind of source. This was it's going into a lobby area, and you can see there's a PVC roof on the lobby area, and somebody had previously tried spot repairs all over the PVC roof, thinking that that's obviously where the water was coming from. But in fact, the water was coming from the glazed screen around it, from the actual flashings. So we fitted an EPDM tray at the bottom corner to ensure the water is taken out of the area, and fitted timber grounds to take the fixing for the corner pressing, supplied and fitted a line of Ilmod pre-compressed tape to the shadow gap joints, and then the leaks completely stopped. And it's actually about 9 months ago that it's only just been redecorated now because they wanted to wait and see that it actually was fully stopped, but it is. So obviously everything is not the most obvious source. Now, this is a little bit of a boring slide, so I apologise in advance, but it's trying to just explain the difficulty that we come across when there's no as-built drawings in a development. Obviously in the boom times, after the boom, the bust times, so many developers went out of business, and unfortunately so did the design teams as well. So trying to get a hold of drawings is actually very difficult. So one particular problem that we had was a leak that was shown over a window in an apartment. And it was a 3rd floor, there was 1 floor above it, so obviously we tried all the obvious things above, all the plumbing issues and everything in the apartment above. There was no problem there. You're going blindly at all this as well, if you remember, because we've no drawings. The terrace above was all checked and everything, that was all watertight. Eventually we got a hoist out and actually took 3 of the bricks out above the window just to see if there was a cavity tray in place, which there was. And then we eventually found, with the help of a surveyor, obviously, that there was the water was actually travelling along the floor slab, and ultimately we couldn't actually replace the floor slab, obviously. So in the end, we ended up taking the whole panel of brickwork out from the front of the building between 2 stories, fitting an aluminium tray to actually direct the water into the weep holes that were actually in the brickwork. So it was actually sorted, but it was just a really expensive, again, because you're going blindly at a building. Just then, obviously, the Mud Act of 2011, prior to that, there was no obligation on developers to provide property management agents with as-built drawings, but that's actually changed. But it's kind of, it hasn't really come into, we haven't seen the benefit of it yet, because most of the developments were actually developed pre-2011. The importance of a planned preventative maintenance programme. Well, ultimately, this is about extending the lifespan of all the constructed elements of the multi-unit development, which is obviously to protect the assets of the owners. And in terms of budgeting, planned maintenance obviously can be allowed for from your, when you're planning out your budgets. The preventative maintenance programs reduce costs by containing the small problems before they become big problems. Good planned preventative maintenance planning reduces the need for reactive call-outs, and obviously reactive call-outs are more expensive. In addition to the important structural preventative maintenance. Also, the cosmetic look of the development is hugely important to residents and owners to ensure a good rental return and a nice place to live. And I think sometimes, people, on the board of directors of different properties, obviously they're hugely interested and informed about the actual building work and the construction work of the actual development. But the people who are living there and who are trying to rent out their accommodation only really care that the place looks nice when somebody actually walks in the door and that everything works. So on preventative maintenance for roofs, roofs are obviously a huge investment, and to have to replace a roof is extremely costly. So all roofs require periodic maintenance to achieve the maximum lifespan and to prevent water ingress inside and the expense of having to repair that. Roofs do not wear uniformly because certain areas may be affected more severely than others, like with wind or sunlight or whatever it is. Equalising wear by upgrading worn areas is the secret to prolonged life. Maintenance might be as simple as re-gravelling a windswept corner, or more complex, such as correcting a water ponding problem. Water ponding is a particular problem on a PVC roof, if it does exist on a PVC roof, because it actually wears away. It affects the chemical makeup of the PVC roof and actually causes it to break down. It's really important that, just anytime that somebody's on a roof, whether it's a caretaker or whatever, they should actually be looking for debris and anything around the drains. If it's a single-storey roof, like kids playing balls or whatever, as the balls go into the outlets, they block up the gutters, they block up the downpipes, and they obviously cause water ingress downstairs. And also just to note small roofing repairs, because they should be actually carried out immediately rather than waiting as they become bigger. Just typical preventative maintenance on a slated or tiled roof. A visual inspection should be carried out regularly to check for missing or slipped slates or tiles. You can just see the examples there, just the cracked slates. Again, they just slipped over there. Also, you can check out from the inside. You can actually see if this, slater's felt has separated the sarking felt or whatever. You actually see daylight coming through from the inside. So that's something that can be done as well by anybody. The barge, again, just checking for loose or missing mortar. You can just see the gap there. You'll have problems with birds getting in there as well as water getting in there. So again, that's something that just should be covered up immediately with mortar. A PVC roof, they call these high performance roofs, and a bit like a high performance racehorse, they're also really expensive to run or to manage. The maintenance is difficult because the roofs are it's a very thin layer. Can I just show an example? Oh. This is a PVC roof, so you can just see the kind of the covering that's it's so thin, and obviously in the heat and everything that actually softens up. So you should make sure that nobody ever walks on the roof with anything other than really soft-soled shoes. They don't walk on it in the rain because it's actually slippery and somebody will have an accident. No cigarettes. A cigarette will actually drop and literally burn into it. Again, if there's trees around a PVC roof covering and like birds peck at the roof, to get the kind of the seeds or whatever from the trees, they'll actually peck holes into the Trocal roof covering. Any equipment that's on the roof should actually be placed on suitable protection, so again it doesn't actually cut into the roof. Anything like they just should be cleaned off regularly. That kind of thing shouldn't be allowed to happen, like a build-up of like it's just soil and whatever trees and stuff like this. That needs to be cleaned off and removed on a regular basis. Standing water should not be allowed, as I said already, as it causes the covering to break down. You need to wash down your roof. It can be, you just use a normal detergent, water and a soft brush. The lifetime is around 10 years for the 1.2 mil standard, or for 1.5 mil it can be extended to 15 or 20 years. It can do a number of coverings on it. Tears and splits in the membrane can occur. These can be identified visually over a small area, but over a large area where because water travels as well, there might be a hole over there that's actually not showing, maybe until 10 feet away from it or something. So what you would do is carry out a spark test on the roof, which actually shows where the holes are in it, and then the guys who carry out the spark test will actually mark where the repairs need to be done, and you would just basically carry out patch repairs to those particular areas. The patches then, for example, the patch there, what they do is they weld it on. It's actually a hot air gun that's used. It's not a live flame that's used on it, or else there's a special roofing tape that can be used as well for small patch repairs. Paralon, or a green mineral felt roof, again, it's a much thicker covering, and it's probably easier to maintain as well, in that it's not as sensitive to water ponding. That's actually okay to water ponding on the felt roofs or the Paralon roofs. The thickness is, it gives actually a 7 mil cover with an underlay on it, which is a good, hefty kind of thick covering. So for walking on or anything, the chances are you're not going to damage it. Again, the roof should be cleaned off in late autumn and spring. Regularly, you should visually check all roofs, as I said already, and during the roof clean, again, lapped joints should be spot checked for signs of wear and tear. You can just see there the way the trowel can just get into these things, and water actually gets in there, and that's what causes leaks underneath. Again, also just things like cable, like Sky would have been renowned for it, and other kind of any kind of NTL it would have been at the time as well. But they're getting onto roofs and they're piercing the roof covering with cable ties, which are obviously piercing the roof and causing leaks as well. So you just don't want people doing that. So lovely hopperhead there, full of twigs, just ready for a nice bird to build their nest in it. That should obviously be cleared out. Gutters again should be cleared out all the time. You can see the bottom left-hand corner there. That was actually caused during the snowfall last year, or the year before last actually, just with the weight of the snow. It just pulled gutters down all over the place. And a leaking outlet, all that kind of stuff again just needs to be actually checked. Gutters need to be cleaned. You'd say, you know, a good practice would say twice a year. Probably once a year would be enough in most areas. But again, if you're, like, there's one particular development that we look after, and there's pine trees, and the needles from the pines literally block up the gutters, and they're cleaned out every 3 months. But other ones, once a year would be more than sufficient. Just in cleaning out gutters, there's a vacuum methodology that can be done now, which is obviously a much cheaper way of doing it than going to the expense of hoists and labour and stuff. But again, it wouldn't be as thorough as a manual clean. So although it's okay to do it once or twice, but you really do need to actually get up there and actually check the joints, check the brackets, and check that that everything is as it should be. Fascias and soffits as well should be checked for rot or damage. Again, particularly obviously timber fascias, and the rot doesn't get better. You need to address it. You can address it in patches, but it does need to be fixed. And timber should obviously be painted regularly. Cappings, again, as part of roof maintenance, the joints in the cappings should be checked. When the seals in the joints break down, it causes leaks down underneath, and again, as I said already, unsightly staining. And again, don't wait for everything just to break down. You can just do it all bits at a time. Budgeting for repairs and maintenance annually. As I said already, planned maintenance can obviously be budgeted for. Besides the M&E installations in an MUD, the planned maintenance routines should be in place for the following. So again, as I've already covered, roofs, gutters, cappings. Another one is common area doors, actually. In one of the developments that we work in, there's 30 core doors. And funny enough, the doors that were actually put in were more suitable for domestic rather than commercial doors. But obviously the volume of traffic going in and out is huge. So we were getting about 25 call-outs, say, in a year to address things like hinges or doors dropping, dragging on the ground, that kind of stuff. But we actually put in a planned preventative maintenance programme to actually to service all of the doors twice a year, and it's cut back down call-outs. I think we had 3 call-outs over the space of a year, since putting the programme in place. Also things like mechanisms on windows. Again, it's stuff that people forget about, but like everything that has a joint on it, or that needs to be, that moves, needs to be oiled or greased or whatever you want to call it, and just check that it actually is functioning before it seizes or breaks down altogether. Timber, again, you need to treat your bin sheds, your fences, all that kind of stuff, again, every couple of years. An awful lot of the timber is treated now and it lasts for about 10 years, but at the same time, you still need to check it, because obviously weather conditions in different places would vary. Curbing, paving and cobble lock, and again it's just making sure that get the small issues before they become big issues. On cobble lock, and we find a lot with bin trucks actually driving over it, they totally knock it out of place. So it's important just to kind of repair the small areas and then to save having to do the big job. And the importance of using reputable contractors. Obviously, this is all about protecting your asset or your client's assets. Repairs and maintenance are so important. You need to use a competent, insured and compliant contractor. Also, know you can trust them. I mean, you've got to build up trust with people. These guys are on your property. They have your keys, they have your codes, they have your fobs. They can walk in and out of your development. Make sure you can trust them. They're also in apartments as well, so it's really important for security. Ensure that they've all of their health and safety accreditation, tickets, safe pass, that they're entitled or insured to be PSCS. Check their track record. Build a relationship of trust with a knowledgeable and ethical contractor, so they'll come out in the middle of the night like us at short notice when you need them. They also use the right materials for the job. People can do more harm than good actually going out and putting the wrong kind of material, like patching a trocol roof with felt or something like that. You'd actually destroy the roof. So just make sure that they actually know what they're doing. They can be your eyes and ears on the property, like proactively advising on the potential issues that are actually, that may be going to arise. A guy who knows a building will actually be able to spot that probably before you will yourself. Let the contractor get to know your building, so it's not a new job every single time they go out. And also, nobody's perfect, but you want to know that if there is a problem, that they will come back and fix it. So that's really my presentation, and I'd be very happy to take any questions. I don't know if that I'll answer them all, but I'll certainly try.
One of the classic ones is when you get the call out at 2 o'clock on a Saturday night to a leak from an apartment above. Like, what's reasonable to expect in that situation from the contractor who's going out with no access to obviously materials or anything like that? They're just going out to it.
Well, I suppose the first thing that you have to do is ensure that you have a contractor who actually will go out to it, because obviously water, it doesn't go away, it gets worse. It's going to, you know, as the day goes on or the night goes on, the leak is going to get worse. What we would do in that case is you'd contain the leak at the very least on the night that you're called out. Now, there's two different things there. First of all, if it was a leak from a plumbing, problem overhead, obviously you would try and get access into the apartment overhead, and we can get a plumber out at the same time to fix that. If it was actually a roof leak, realistically at 2 o'clock in the morning you can't actually safely get onto a roof to carry out repairs. But as it happened to us like many times, we've been called out on Stephen's Day, we've been called out on Christmas Day, and again it's this kind of stuff. And although everything is closed, we have a workshop and we have a van full of equipment that you'll go out on the night, contain the leak, but that you'll return the next day and carry out the proper repair, at least, you know, to do you till the weekend is over or the holidays are over, whatever that might be. Hope that answers your question.
Yeah. So maybe a call back then.
It probably would be, realistically, yeah. But certainly the thing to do is, it's all about containing. You don't want, you want to reduce the amount of damage as much as you possibly can. Hi.
We've had the experience just recently of we're on the ground floor and the leak was coming from the floor above us. But we didn't know the owners, we weren't sure how to contact them. Now our guys have a protocol, which it sounds fine, but in our situation we found it a little bit frustrating because, as you said, the more the water leaks, damage has been done to the carpets, etc.
Yeah.
And we had no way of contacting the person. And then when we asked them, I kept saying, well, what's an emergency service for? Surely you send somebody out. And rightly, they pointed out that eventually it was the apartment above us. But there's a bit of a grey area there, really, which, when you get news like this, you're obviously busy doing something else. You're trying to just get it fixed or get somebody to look at it on the phone. And it was a bit of a stone wall, really.
Yeah, I don't know how, in terms of, even from you think, oh God, can you not just break into the house above, or into the apartment above and just, get to repair the leak? But obviously you can't do that for insurance reasons. I know we've been told before actually not to do, although you'd be tempted to do because that's the problem.
Well, we weren't sure actually because they said common areas, and this was actually, it was leaking outside our apartment. There was nothing on our ceilings.
Right.
But
it's in a riser or something, was it?
It was a covered-in duct.
Oh yeah.
That was taking drainage, I'd assume, from the ensuite apartment in the above apartment.
That's probably similar to the problem that I went through there, actually, the one where the leak was on the very top floor and coming all the way down through it. And in that particular case, we were at the mercy of the resident to actually give us access into their apartment. And so I honestly really don't know. I mean, from a building point of view, I know what we do to fix it, but I don't know in terms of how you... how it works in terms of, I suppose, in the particular development, I don't know whether you're allowed to...
But in this particular case, I think the apartment above was vacant for some time.
Oh.
And surely people would ring, and surely they should have, as an emergency service, have the name and address, maybe a phone number of the key holder.
Yeah, but I'd say we've been given names and addresses of lots of key holders, and they are the key holders, but they don't answer their phone, or it's, Saturday night and they're kind of, so I think it's probably more of a question. Actually, it's not really the fix that you're asking about, it's more the kind of the access, is it?
Rachel, maybe I can step in there. I suppose there is a requirement under the Mud Act that owners provide contact details, but the reality is a lot of owners don't. So unless we have provided their contact details, all we will have on the system is the name of the owner and their unit address. So if they're not there and they have provided alternative contact details, so the emergency after our service, which is a call centre, have access into our systems. So they would be put up with that
the thing about it is, if it happens in my home, I probably shouldn't have done this, but if I saw that coming down the ceiling, I would give an axe and take out the box and seeing what was there. And I wouldn't have done a lot of damage. I would have just looked from the bottom to see if it could be staunched instead of wrecking my carpet and the old road. And it just didn't seem
Our problem was the fact that even though I was at the scene within 10 minutes of the call out, and I was able to identify fairly well that it was the apartment above which was causing the water leak. There was no answer to the apartment. Now, when we called the emergency line, the problem was that there was even difficulty in identifying the number of the apartment above, because I had taken note of 2 apartment numbers, and I wasn't sure exactly which was the number of the one above it. Now, I was able, as part of the phone call, from an old brochure, to be able to pull out the floor plans and the numbers, and was able to provide the apartment number in question. But surely the people who answered the emergencies should have that information to hand. Surely
The answer is just a local contact point that apartment owners can call out emergency contractors, and it's not, and that's what, it's not presented as anything different. It is basically, if there's an issue, that you can contact a contractor in a relevant trade, depending on whether it was a fire alarm.
Unfortunately, our problem was that the person involved wasn't inclined to make a call out that particular afternoon. I think it was Saturday afternoon or Sunday afternoon.
I say we found ourselves between 2 stools, really. But you
Yeah,
mentioned calling
I think
out.
I think we're confused with calls, they're not,
Yeah,
not what, like they're a third party.
yes, we didn't realise that at the time, we expected better knowledge.
It's back to whether it's a common area issue or an internal apartment issue.
Well, we made it very clear it was a common area issue.
Yeah, but the source is from an internal apartment.
Yeah, I think
So,
the
the
issue
reality,
is
so if the cause of the leak is from an internal apartment source, it's the responsibility of that owner.
But
From an
what-
insurance perspective, the reality is, we've had it before where a leak, has been coming through the apartment above, and that apartment owner, it was from a washing machine, a loose connection, but repeatedly wouldn't allow access.
Mm.
And every time they turned on the washing machine, they flooded the apartment below. And, and obviously the rest of that management company was sort of like, but we need to, how do we get in? Because, you're into all legal problems, and from an insurance perspective. Now,
But
ultimately, the insurance will cover
Mm.
any damage that's from accidental damage. So that there's a pipe that bursts or something like that that's accidental and causes damage into a common area. That's what insurance is covering.
But why wouldn't it be worth having a call out, like, who's to know when that person came back from picking up the dog? Our tenant had put buckets out to catch the water.
No, it was in the common area.
It was only the common area was the
No,
problem as far as we were concerned.
Yeah, I suppose the point of, as Rachel said, as to where that water emanated from
I know,
is the problem.
Yes.
If it emanated from a issue within an internal apartment, it's not deemed from an insurance perspective a common area issue. It's an
Yeah.
internal apartment issue. I
But,
know,
but the damage was being done in common area.
yeah.
So that's,
But I suppose the point is saying if it's traced back to an apartment, but there was no access. So the management company can't just decide to break into an apartment from an insurance perspective that causes greater issues.
we're not proposing breaking into an apartment, but all we're proposing is that a record of key holders be maybe the management group on the ground should be asked to try and keep it up to date.
Yeah.
Or get the management company themselves.
Sure, I mean, well, we do keep a record of all key holder information on the system, and we write out twice a year to all owners, looking for them and reminding them to provide us with that information, and actually advise them on what we do with that information, or advise to provide that information. Now, unfortunately, compliance can vary depending, on individuals. We would have a lot of key holder information, but at the same time, we have a significant number that haven't provided that, despite the request.
Yeah, well, Victoria did explain to me afterwards the way it went, and that I was speaking to a person who's familiar with the block, when I thought she would be there. That was where my difficulty was, that it was supposed to be an emergency number, but it did nothing for me. So,
I hope you got the answer anyway. Everybody else okay?
Just in relation to roof maintenance, I suppose one of the things that prevents it from doing so frequently is obviously the access to roof. They have to get cherry pickers, and
The expense.
Is there any ways around that, or is there any sort of what would be the typical cost of doing roof?
It depends on the size of the roof, obviously. But I mean, yes, it is expensive. Okay, hoist equipment is expensive. There are things you can buy. Actually, there's a thing called a man anchor system. Believe it or not, that you can buy, which is a mobile anchor system that you can actually bring with you and put onto the roof to harness off, where there's no roof access system in place. So in terms of, obviously you still need to get up onto the roof in the first place, but the whole kind of like the key guard system where you harness off when you're on a roof, if that doesn't exist on a roof, which again on older developments it probably doesn't, but there is a mobile man anchor system that you'd actually buy to put it up there, but it still unfortunately doesn't really reduce the need for a hoist. If you need a hoist to get up onto the roof, you need a hoist. And I honestly don't really have an answer as to how it could be cheaper. Because it has to be done safely.
I think to counter that, we did put in a programme instead. It was a quarterly roof maintenance on flat roofs in development, and I suppose you may have had 1 or 2 leaks a year, which, given the volume of water, could have resulted in anywhere between 5,000 and 10,000 euros worth of damage. But for a maintenance programme of €2,000, we've managed to save that 5,000 or 10,000 euros each year. So we certainly see the value in a proactive, regular maintenance.
Yeah. I mean, water ingress is just an absolute nightmare. It is so expensive. Like, it just does so much damage inside. So keep it out. There's another thing as well, actually. One of our lads this morning, I was just asking about the various different products that we use on roofs, like for kind of repairs and stuff. And there's obviously, you see an ad every week for, watertight this or whatever. And, put it on in the rain, it all still works, whatever. And he said to me, the only thing that works in the rain is an umbrella. That's it. So, there you go. So thanks a million for giving up your lunch hour. And I'm starving. Thanks very much.